I actually don't see Mike yet.
We got a minute.
Yeah.
I have two
There he
meetings at
is.
6 o'clock.
Is he here? Oh,
There's 9 meetings tonight, Jane.
That's,
They're a busy town hall.
that's a lot. That's a lot of meetings.
perfect. So it's 6 o'clock. We have a quorum. So we can get started. So I call the 5/11/2026 Killam School Building Committee meeting to order. We'll do a roll call vote since we're virtual. Sean, I don't think is here. John,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Kirk,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
and is Nancy? And Nancy.
Yes.
Thank you. And Carla is here. Quick review of, thank you everybody for coming. This is going to be a short one. Just a quick review of the agenda. We're going to offer public comment, any liaison reports. We will review the current bid status, and issues that we've had over the past few days. We will have a potential vote to make a recommendation to cancel the current bid, and review the rebid timeline and approve the new proposed rebid. And then we'll talk about future agenda items and next meeting dates for KSBC and XLT. And then we will adjourn. So is there any public comment? Doesn't look like we have anybody from the public here. Okay, moving on. Are there any KSBC liaison reports? Okay, seeing none. We're going to move on to review of the current bid status and issues, and Mike and Jane and I can chime in on this piece of it as well. So Mike, if you could take it away, please.
Sure thing. I'm just going to move I have you on one screen. So just wanted to follow up with everybody. Our initial expectation was that we were going to have filed subbids this week, and then we were going to be doing general contractor bids in about a week. But a few weeks back, we received a concern from a potential, not even a bidder or a filed subbidder, but a bidder that would bid to a filed subbidder. So it's a second tier bidder, about what they believe was a proprietary item specific to HVAC controls. And we met with town council and we reviewed that, and we informed them that it was, in fact, they were correct. It was a proprietary spec, and that was done with intent, and that we had reviewed that with the building committee. It was one of 6 items that we reviewed back in March as a committee and voted to proceed with proprietary specs, and we thought everything was resolved. And then the day before the filed sub bids, they reached out to the AG reached out to us at least the day before the filed sub bids.
That's right.
And there was a lot of back and forth. I'm certainly happy to get into a little bit more of the details with everybody, but in the end, the AG has directed us to we had to basically rebid this work. They were specifically talking about HVAC, but we know that there was a total of 6 different items that were treated very similarly, so that it was really more of a bigger problem was HVAC, electric, and maybe some of the general bid as well. So we met as a group on Friday, I think it was Friday, and
Yep.
made the recommendation. No, it was Thursday. It was
Thursday. Yeah.
Thursday, and made the recommendation to cancel the bid based off the direction from the AG's office and go out to rebid. So we're looking to propose a calendar to everybody tonight. But before I get into the next steps, I don't know if anybody has any questions or anything with what I've said so far. I know it's a lot to take in, and I think people got the letter that's up on the screen earlier today. I don't know if you had a chance to read through it or not, but
I mean, Mike, just a quick question on my end is, how I didn't get the sense that what we were doing when we voted on it in March was all that rare. So I just
Nope.
trying to kind of connect the circle here as far as how it's
So I don't think what we did was rare. I think what we did was proper. Let me start with that. That we did an evaluation. We considered are there alternatives that could be or equals, if you will. And we met with the facilities team, and the designer did a lot of research on their own, and came back. I think Ed, initially we had a few more items on the list that might have been proprietary, and we were able to kind of determine multiple options for different things, but these 6 items we weren't. I think what the AG was saying to us is that they didn't like the specific wording that we had in the spec, and we suggested that we would amend that by addendum, which is a common practice. And they said that you can't do that. We actually requested a meeting with them so that we could understand it a little bit better, and they declined to meet with us.
Yep. So if I can just add in here, the AG's office reached out to us through our purchasing email, which is a general email that comes to myself. Actually, it doesn't come to me anymore. It comes to Joshua and Katie. And I can't remember exactly how I got it, but I think it was copied over to us by council. So from the bidder, the paragraph E bidder, and their particular, as Mike said, their particular objection was to the specific language in the specs that said substitutions not accepted. Even though we have a substitution form in the bid and all the other things that we did, everything was done correctly, but just that particular language, those 3 words, were unacceptable to the AG's office. The proposed this paragraph E subbidder did not file a bid protest. They have not filed a bid protest. But the AGO's bid unit reached out to us and gave us some direction. They're like, you must rebid the HVAC. I asked them a few questions back and forth in emails, and they're like, you have to rebid HVAC. And so then we were like, well, how do we rebid just this one piece? And we knew that there was this other language, as Mike said, with electrical particularly, that we felt that the best way to do this was to rebid the whole thing, because we didn't want to get a bid protest afterward on the electrical language, even if we rebid just the HVAC, because we would have to rebid it, and then we would be weeks and weeks out down the road. So the least amount of time is lost by doing this rebid at this time. And all the rest of our proprietary work, the votes the committee took, everything else, the letter that was saved, the minutes of the meeting, all of that was proper. And it was just this particular language. And I do want to reiterate that the designer and the OPM came to the town and asked for an opinion from town council. We did run it through town council. Town council got back to us, and they felt that we were clear. We did respond to the complainant and let them know that it was a proprietary spec, and here's all the information, and here's the public documents, etc. And they brought it to the AGO's office at some point, and as Mike said, the AGO waited until the day before the bid was due to reach out to us. So that's why we're on the trajectory that we're on.
Yeah. The other thing, just so everybody knows, there was a lot of, in a very short time, there was a lot of discussion, but we initially postponed the filed subbid with the intent of just making a clarification to this bid with an addendum. And the AG's office said, you can't do that. And again,
Right.
I've been in the business for 30 plus years, and an addendum is literally the mechanism you use to make corrections, and they're saying that we couldn't do that. So I don't know, Nancy, I know you're an architect. I don't know if you've ever heard of somebody saying an addendum is not satisfactory for a bid clarification, but that's what we were told.
Yeah. Well, I think, and this is, we're not clear 100% on this, but the way that I read it and the way that town council reads it is that the language, by saying no substitutions or substitutions not accepted, creates a chilling effect from the point that we issued the documents. And so we need to reissue the whole thing so that any potential paragraph E subbidders understand that they can propose a substitution that's considered equal to the town. So that's where that comes from. It's very specific, it's very technical, and it's unusual that the AGO's bid unit makes a comment like this before there's a bid protest. I think this is nothing I've experienced. Mike, I don't know if that's anything you've experienced. It's been Deb Anderson was the person who handled this previously, and it was done very differently. I'm somewhat, as much as I'm dismayed by this, I'm also somewhat grateful that we know now versus having to go through a bid protest later and having to rebid it and losing more time down the road. So,
Yeah, I think in the past, my experience is Deb and her team would offer advice, but they would never actually put anything in writing, such as what happened, unless
yeah.
they had an official protest or an official, request for arbitration or official, and for them to do it on an unofficial is very, very unusual for me.
Yep. Agreed.
So I think what we were looking at is looking at the overall timelines, looking at what are the options, and one of the options would be to cancel the bid, because we were told basically no matter what you do, you can't just do an amendment to that bid. Again, not really sure why, but that's what we were told in writing from the AG's office. So if we chose to cancel the bid last week, we put it back out on the street legally. You have to give 2 weeks for a filed subbidder, and typically it's one more week for the GC. Now, typically, like when we initially did this, I think we gave 5 weeks for the filed subs and then 2 more weeks for the GC. But I think what we're going to recommend tonight is we as the OPM can work with the design team and the legal counsel to draft a letter basically indicating that, based off a requirement from the AG's office, we are rebidding this specific to some questions on proprietary items, list the 6 specific proprietary items and attach our letter, the letter that, we voted on back in March to that. And what I'm going to recommend is that we do 2 things with that document. One is we can send it out to all the qualified, pre-qualified bidders, both filed subbid and non-filed sub and general contractors right now before the bid packages comes out, because it's not a ex parte communication or anything like that. We're doing it prior to the bid, giving them information that, be on the lookout for bid documents to be coming out a week from now. And what we're going to do is we're going to recommend that the design team take the original bid documents, take the 5 addendums that we had, that were answered based off of questions asked throughout the bid process, incorporate them into a conform set, and then in addition to that conform set, add these clarifications on the 6 proprietary items, and that's all we're changing. So we're going to let in the letter we send to the pre-qualified bidders, we're going to let them know that that's what we're doing. We're, this new bid is basically going to be a conform set of the old bid with the 5 addendums, plus clarifications on these 6 proprietary items. We're not going to get into exactly the wording on the proprietary items or anything like that, but I think in talking with legal counsel, what we're going to say is that, HVAC controls is intended to be a proprietary bid item. However, there is a substitution request procedure in Division 0, Section 1300, which allows anybody to submit a substitution request form and, will allow that, something to that effect. Again, we have to wordsmith that a little bit and have legal counsel weigh in on it. But that's the intent, is to have them do that. And again, if anybody in the committee, thinks differently, we talked a little bit with Jane and with legal counsel and everything. This committee voted those items to be proprietary. I think we still believe they should be proprietary based off of your needs. So we weren't looking to ask you to change that vote in any way. But if somebody feels strongly that you want to talk about that or have a discussion on that, we can certainly do that. Looks like Greg has his hand raised.
Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if, on the opposite end of this extreme, if we denote proprietary or sole source product that we want to be specified, yet we allow a substitution, do we have to entertain the substitution, or can we just decline the substitution outright if one is proposed?
So the way the process works, so it's kind of funny. Even when you have a proprietary item, and even when you intend for it to be proprietary, Mass General Law still requires you to allow them to try and provide have the ability to provide a substitution, and what they have to do is they have to prove through that submission that it is equal. Now, for HVAC controls, it not only has to function equally, it has to tie out to the control systems that you use and be able to be able to be managed just like all the other buildings that you have. Just like, if we have keys, it doesn't mean it's not equal because the key works just like the key you have. It has to, work within the systems that you have and things of that nature. So that's part of the rub here, I think, is that we do believe that there's multiple controllers that do very similar functions, but not the same function. And that the difference between similar and same is why the proprietary is needed in those situations. So, my expectation, I kind of told the XLT this morning, is that if we move forward with this as expected, that we might still get a protest later on from these people, because we're not looking to change proprietary. We're just looking to clarify what proprietary means, and that that we're in conformance with Mass General Law.
Good, Greg?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
All right. So with that said, Joshua, I assume this is you on the screen. Can we go to the bottom of that letter to like the little timeline section? So this is just kind of a general timeline that we outlined that we'd like to discuss with you here. So if I flip-flop number 1 and 2 here for a second, number 1 was cancel the current bid by addenda. We did do that on Friday in anticipation of this meeting, but we knew time was of the essence. Initially, we were hoping that we might actually be able to put it out to bid as soon as this week. But talking with the design team, there's a number of sub-consultants they need to coordinate with the addendums that were issued previously, and we want to make sure we get it right. So, out of kind of a little bit of an abundance of caution in trying to give us time to work through and get wording correct and send it to legal counsel and make sure that they have it all squared away and everything. What we're looking to do is send an advertisement in the Central Register by the 14th. That's this Thursday. When you advertise by Thursday, it shows up the next week in the newspaper, in the Central Register. So we would at the same time put advertisements in the newspaper and Combi, so that basically all those advertisements would come on number 4 on the 20th, which is a week from Wednesday. Between now and that Wednesday, we would issue that letter, which is number 3 that I was talking about, that we would issue it to all pre-qualified bidders, just letting them know why we canceled the old bid, that the new bid is basically going to be very similar to the old bid, with just the proprietary being clarified, and give them the heads up that the new bid will be coming out as of the 20th. So on the 20th, number 5, the documents would be available through bid docs again. We've already coordinated that with bid docs, and they've already set up a tentative, like a new bid number, a new setup, so that this document, or so this project can be managed. We would give them basically 2 weeks for filed sub bids here, so that's the minimum requirement. But we feel that that's a reasonable time period. So jumping down a little bit here, down to number 8, the filed sub bids are due June 4th. That's 2 weeks and a day. And we added the day in because Memorial Day weekend is in there, and we have the holiday in there. So we want to do that. But for the filed sub bids to be due the 4th, we're basically looking for RFIs a week before that, which is the 28th. Sorry, I'm jumping back up to number 6. And then we would have any addendas issued by the 1st. The 1st is the Monday. We would actually hope to try and get them out the week before, but we have as late as the Monday, which is 24 hours before the bid, that we could issue those. So filed sub bids would be the 4th. That's a Thursday. 1 week later, we would have the GC bids on the 11th. And then we were proposing on the 15th, which is a Monday, to meet with you folks, make a recommendation for approval, hopefully get that approval, and the intent would be to have a notice to proceed issued the next day and the contract documents issued the next day, at which point the contractor has 5 days to turn those around, get their bonds together, get the documents signed and everything like that. I think there was a question internally today if we wanted to try to speed that up at all. And the way we could speed that up a little bit more would be, rather than getting the bids on the 11th and then waiting till Monday the 15th to meet with the SBC, we could get the bids on the 11th and meet on the 12th, the next day, the Friday, and get that released so that potentially we could release the notice to proceed by the end of the day on the 12th, or first thing on the 15th, and we would save a day and a half there. Just to remind everybody, the request that we got from the school department, even with the old bid line and the old bid timeline, was that the contractor was not going to mobilize the site until students were out of school this year. So even within this timeline, that overall ability to mobilize the site is really in the same time period. We're still actually awarding this notice to proceed prior to the students getting out. And so it does, we do lose a couple of weeks here. It's about 3 weeks for them to get paperwork together and organize and start shop drawings and submittals and, you know, order their trailers and things like that. But the physical time on site isn't really changing, you know, changing at all. So with that, I'll again open up to questions. Again, I know
Mike, this is John Coote. What will the clarification actually say? I don't mean the exact wording, but it seems that you said that the original documents allowed for substitutions even with proprietary items. So what will your clarification make? What change will your clarification make?
So let me try. So the original document said no substitution. It said, you know, we're going to use, I think it was Honeywell. Is it
Yes.
Honeywell controls with no substitution? But we also had a substitution substitution section at the beginning. What we're now going to say, rather than say no substitution, we're going to say Honeywell is intended to be a proprietary specification. However, vendors are able to provide a substitution request, follow, you know, and we're going to refer them back to that section 1300 and say you have to follow the procedures laid out in that 1300. I think what the AG's office said was, before we said no substitutions, even though we had the substitution request form in there. So we're just going to take out that no substitutions. We're going to say it is intended to be proprietary, but that substitutions are still allowed per Mass General Law. And again, the legal team might help us with, you know, kind of crafting the exact wording about Mass General Law. But we are going to indicate on each of these 6 items that it is the intent to be proprietary. And we're going to actually include the letter that I think Joe provided and that you folks voted on as support of that, you know, why it should be proprietary. But we are going to, again, allow for a substitution. I'll be honest with you, I think our design team has done a pretty good job in due diligence prior to this, and we don't believe that there is an or equal, but that's not our judgment. Like, if somebody else thinks that they can prove something's equal, then they have to be, you know, they have to be given the opportunity to do so.
But from the bidder's point of view, that creates a little difficulty, does it not? I mean, that means that they have to submit a price based upon the proprietary item. In other words, their price cannot be based upon a substitution, because we've kind of indicated that we're not going to accept any substitutions.
It's at their risk. I'll say, you know, they could choose to bid the proprietary item and try to substitute later. They could think that they might feel, hey, I have a great case and I know I'm going to get this, but that's at their risk. To your point, if they submitted on an or equal and it was deemed not equal, now we can't just say we don't like that product, it's not equal. We're going to have to provide evidence of why it's not equal. It doesn't use the same interface, it doesn't work the same way, it doesn't have as many features or whatever it is. But if it isn't equal, then we would reject it, and then they would have to provide the specified product. That is correct.
Yeah, that seems to me to you know, potentially create a problem down the line, a dispute as to whether we are rejecting an equal, what they consider equal, without good cause.
And I think that's why we already reviewed it and evaluated it and brought it to you, and you folks already agreed that there wasn't an or equal, basically, in this situation back in March when we voted on that proprietary list. But
Well, I don't think we made a decision that a substitution would not be equal. It seemed to me we voted on something which was given to us by the facilities department as a preference, because it did tie in with the rest of the town's operations. So I don't think we made a vote which said nothing else could ever be equal.
No,
That-
you made a vote saying that you are willing to accept a proprietary item for those items.
Okay, I think this is, there's still a potential here for some problems down the road, as far as I can see.
John, I think our process of what we did with the proprietary items and voting on it, we did our due diligence, and I think that process was good. And I think that we have to ensure that certain things match up with our existing systems. So it puts the onus back on on the contractors and the subcontractors, so to speak, to if they have other ideas or other alternatives to make a proposal. But at that point, any risk associated with that or additional costs associated with that would fall into their laps. So I do think
Well,
the process
that's what I think is doubtful. Is there no way we can just say there are no substitutions for these specific items? There is no, legally we cannot do that. Is that what you're saying?
That's
I see
exactly
Greg's
why
hand
we
up, but
had to rebid it.
yeah. We specifically can't.
It's kind of crazy to me, but Mass General Law says even if you vote proprietary, you still have to give the potential that somebody could try to substitute it.
in
Yes,
case
but
someone,
then it becomes a judgment call on whose part as to whether a
The town.
substitution is
It's going to
equal.
come to the town and the design team, and the design team will review it with the town, and a call will be made.
right.
Yeah, but it's still a call. It's still a judgment, and it's we could still be accused of being arbitrary and capricious. Those legal words that they use.
Greg, yep.
So yeah, okay.
Greg.
It seems to me that it's not totally clear here, but there we are.
Yeah, I was going to ask a similar question to what I share some of John's concerns. Who is the arbiter of or equal? If a substitution request is submitted, who is the arbiter of that submission?
So my general answer would be the architect is the ultimate interpreter of the documents of the drawings. But I would say in this situation, it would also be reviewed with the facilities team and potentially even brought to this committee where it's risen to this level already that we might come back to this committee and say, XYZ was submitted. We believe it is equal because of this, this, and this, or we believe it is not equal because of this, that, and the other thing. And we could potentially bring that to the committee, but ultimately, it would be the architect that would be either accepting or denying it, if you will. But I would say probably with the support, not probably, with the support of the district, whether it's the support of the official support of the committee or not. I guess that's something we could talk about.
Is there precedent or legal recourse that is typical outside of approval by the architect, the designer of record?
Not that I know. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I've never even come to a committee. The only reason why I said I'd come to the committee is because I think, we're having this discussion here right now, and I know we have a lot of experience on this committee, but I think in general, whether it's proprietary or not, sometimes we have 3 listed manufacturers and somebody provides a 4th. And even in that situation, they have to provide a substitution request form. Part of the substitution request form is a protection of the owner, because they might say, hey, I can provide this for the same price or for better, so I want to do that. And then lo and behold, whatever they provide then creates an issue for one of the other subs. And
Right.
it makes the other sub have to spend 20 grand more, whether it's an electrical disconnect or the framing of the wall or whatever, something that's different, that puts the onus on somebody else. So one of the things that this substitution request does is it makes the contractor who's submitting it acknowledge that they are fully responsible for any cost and or schedule impacts created by that substitution request.
Okay, I would just, much like John with structure, I unfortunately am way too familiar with control systems for my own good. I would just caution the design team that whatever the spec language is around, obviously we've learned we can't say is proprietary and no substitutions will be entertained. I think we need to be very careful and intentional and specific about some aspect of the control system and some functionality of the system that makes it all but a shoe-in, because so many of the control systems, the whole point of them being competitive against each other and with each other is similar functionality, similar interoperability, using the same control language and being able to communicate with all sorts of other different control systems and pieces of equipment, so that they don't end up in this position. They all could be competitive. So I would caution that needs to be very closely considered. If this is still sort of a boilerplate controls spec for this use and type of building, we probably need to spend a little bit more energy making it a little more unique and specific to the product that facilities brought to us and that we decided to make a proprietary selection.
Greg, I think that's a great point. I think what we need to do is make sure that the spec isn't more generic, that the spec is very specific in meeting the very specific needs of the facility department.
I sent that exact communication to the entire team today, by the way. So yeah, I'm on your wavelength.
Appreciate it.
You got it.
Yeah, the one thing I will say at the same point, we don't want to be onerous to be onerous. We want to make sure what we're doing is because it's required, not just because we want to make it proprietary,
Yeah, right. There's a rationale.
All right.
Good. If we go back to the timeline, just trying to, cut down as many days or take off as many days as we can on this. When we're talking about the KSBC meeting on Friday 6/11 or Monday 6/15. And this is so we could potentially shave a day off. If we had the meeting on the 11th, which would be at, I think we said 10 a.m., we could issue notice to proceed for the 16th. If we had it on for the 15th, for Monday the 15th, if we had the meeting on 6/15, we would issue notice to proceed on the 16th. So is there a preference from the committee, and are there issues with a 6/11, a Friday meeting at 10 a.m.? Because we would need
The Friday is 6/12. Yeah.
It's a 12. Sorry.
The 11th is the bid date, the Thursday, and then the meeting.
Yes. Yeah.
And just
you,
so everybody
Joshua.
understands on that, there's 4 pre-qualified general contractors. So we're going to get 4 bids, and we're going to get those in at 3 o'clock, and at 3:01 we can start reviewing them. So the design team and the OPM would review them, that night and the next morning, regardless of whether we meet Friday or Monday. We'll be prepared to have those discussions.
So for the committee, are people available? I know it's in the middle of the work day. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I was just going to offer that I think where the timeline that Mike has laid out, and he addressed this, where the timeline, whether it's the 12th or the 15th, with the review and the notice to proceed and contracts still getting work started no earlier than the last day of school, which is the 22nd. I don't have a strong feeling, but I also don't necessarily see the urgency to force this on a Friday versus the Monday. And I think my own preference would be to give the town staff and the OPM and the design team a little bit more time to dissect and review, to be able to parse out and provide their best recommendation, or to do all the requisite leveling and verification. The other thing, and just I'll channel Pat a little bit because he's not on the call, just for anybody, if there were any thoughts, questions, or concerns about shortening the bid period to 2 weeks from what had been 5 previously. There's not going to be enough material change that you would need more time to basically tear the documents apart and retake everything off, where this has already been out on the streets for a number of weeks and all the same players are going to be looking back at it. I think the 2-week period is more than sufficient for a quick review and rehash of any of those filed subbids.
The 2 weeks for filed subbids and then an additional week for the GC.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about?
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. And Greg, on top of that, we're going to try and get that letter out this week to kind of give everybody a heads up so they can start planning already, so I agree with everything you said, that, that we're trying to do everything we can to make this as painless as we can for the bidders. Because, we would have preferred to just keep it on the original schedule, but when we got that direction, we figured that we really couldn't.
So for the rest of the committee, is everybody okay with keeping it on the 15th or having the KSBC meeting on the 15th instead of the 12th? So it would be, at 7 o'clock at our regular time on Monday night.
Fine with me.
I agree with Greg. I think Monday is fine to
Monday's
go
fine.
ahead then.
Okay, then we'll go with the proposed schedule that's currently laid out. Thank you, everyone. Any other discussion?
So Carla, do we want to maybe have a vote to
We
accept
did have
it?
2 votes on here.
Yeah, that's what I was going to go. If there were no more discussion, I was going to go to the a motion or a recommendation to cancel the current bid.
Move to cancel the current bid.
Is
Second.
there seconded by Ed? Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. I don't believe Sean is on. I'm just going to look quick. No. John,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Perk,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
and Carla, yes, and that passes. Thank you, everyone. And then we'll move on to another motion to review or rebid the timeline or to approve the new proposed rebid.
Move to approve the proposed rebid as specified in the, I don't know what that document is, but in the agenda.
Second.
And seconded by Ed. Any discussion? John,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
and Carla, a yes, and that passes. Thank you, everyone. For future agenda items, are there any?
I think just on this, Carla, just so people understand the
Yeah.
thought process here. We're looking to have a meeting of the XLT on the 18th. That's in preparation for the meeting on the 21st. That's just our standard monthly meeting to do invoices and, do the regular workings of the building committee. The reason why originally we had scheduled that for a Thursday in anticipation of the bid happening the day before. But with the holiday and with the building committee and select board meetings and school committee meetings and things like that, we I guess wanted to propose to everybody just to see if that Thursday still made sense. I think it seemed to make sense to me earlier because there's a lot of other meetings and holidays and stuff like that, and kind of everybody was planning that date. So that date was, again, it's just for our standard. It should be a relatively quick meeting. It's invoices. It's the typical liaison reports and public meeting and schedule update, things of that nature.
Right, so if nobody has any additional future agenda items, the next the XLT meetings will be on May 18th and on June 8th, and the next KSBC meeting will be on Thursday, May 21st, and then followed up by June 15th. Okay.
Carla, did these change? I mean, are these consistent with what we had before, or did we change these all just based on what we did with the bid?
So
No.
the 15th was going to be a meeting, but it was originally, that was the one that we were going to award the GC on. So now we're just keeping that meeting because we're going to do the regular
Yep.
monthly stuff. And then the 15th, we can probably get the invoices and stuff together as well as the bid, so we can hopefully do that one meeting to kind of accomplish the standard June monthly stuff as well as getting the bid going.
Gotcha.
So Ed, those were the same.
Gotcha. Okay. Just making
Those
sure.
were the same, and
We're just,
Joshua,
yeah, we're just moving around some of the deck chairs as far as we're pushing back a month.
right,
right.
and Joshua
Okay.
has already put them in our calendars too.
Yep. Perfect. Okay.
Okay. Anything else before we take a final motion? Once again, thank you to everybody for coming out and just entertaining this important and quick meeting. We appreciate it.
Yep. Motion to
Final,
adjourn.
is there a
Second.
second?
Second.
And that is non-debatable. We'll go to the vote. John,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Kirk,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
and Carla. Yes, and we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Have a good
Have a
night.
good night.
Everybody.
Thank you, Carla. Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
everybody.
Good night.